you're just now joining us, we do now have a hurricane watch issued for South Florida. Let's go ahead and get straight to Dr. Greg Postel and Reynolds to talk about that threat.
If you weren't watching carefully, it seems like the tropics, at least in the Atlantic Basin, were relatively quiet, and then over the last couple of weeks, they've just exploded with activity.
The tropics, unfortunately, have come alive, Reynolds. I wish it weren't the case, but we're going to be seeing significant impacts from Florida on northward into Georgia and South Carolina from extremely dangerous, still Category 5 Irma right now as we speak.
Well, the latest we have for you, take a look at some of this data, some of it buoy data, some of it from, again, some of the local stations we have on land. What a monster.
What a monster. Right. The hurricane force winds, as we mentioned earlier, extend outward about 60 miles. I was doing some of the calculations from the reconnaissance aircraft that are in there right now, actually. And earlier today, a couple of hours ago, they did a sample from going from sort of southeast to northwest, and they found that Category 5 winds, Reynolds, still in play in the northern eye wall, right in about there. Cat 5 winds of about 170 miles per hour at the surface, and just above the ground, or just above the ocean, I should say, the winds were about 200 miles per hour. So destructive wind capability with Irma, unlike perhaps we haven't seen since Andrew. And a colleague of ours here at the Weather Channel, I think, wrote a really nice sort of ominous warning, I guess. Think of this as Hurricane Andrew. Prepare as you would for Hurricane Andrew. Now, it may not end up being the same kind of wind that Andrew was, but it might. But it is going to very likely affect a lot more people from south to north, all the way from the southern tip of Florida and the Keys on up through Jacksonville and even then into Georgia and South Carolina.
Would you say it's safe to say at this point that everyone obviously needs to be on guard in parts of Florida into Georgia and not rest your laurels in the idea that maybe the track will change again? I mean, you have to act as though this is going to validate.
You have to prepare for that worst case scenario, because if you don't, the consequences could be fatal. It's a risk reward. Don't do that. Don't assume that it is going to be, you know, perhaps not the extreme event that it could be, because if you end up falling with that false sense of security, dire consequences are coming your way.
How strange is it? If you look at these images, it's so diabolical, where you look at Key West and you look at Lauderdale by the Sea, at tranquility in both those spots, but we know what this has left in its wake. We've seen the damage in place other spots, and we know that atmospheric wrecking ball is making its way eventually through the Bahamas, past Cuba, and possibly to our shores.
Reynolds, those are good points, because what has done so much damage so far with Irma is not the surge, it is the wind. Irma pulverized parts of the leeward islands of the Caribbean, Barbuda nearly uninhabitable by some sources, and it's because of those Category 4 and Category 5 winds. This is a wind threat. We know the water is going to be an issue. We know the storm surge is going to be an issue. But I think what is not getting to play enough, in my opinion, is the real risk of the wind. And that is going to continue to be the case up and down the Florida Peninsula. And we have here a map. Just to give you an idea of where perhaps the 75-mile-per-hour wind gusts will be. And I tell you what, depending on the track, this may expand a little bit to include parts of the west coast of Florida, where wind gusts up to 75 miles per hour are possible. Now, sustained winds of 75 miles per hour or more and gusts well over 100 are probably likely to be confined to, depending on the track, but likely confined to the eastern part of Florida. And you notice the probability for tropical storm force winds is now a near certainty in Miami. And you know the probabilities here are going to go up in the future updates as well.
I'm thinking substantial. Forget that. I'm thinking significant tree damage, widespread power outages, and then just first responders trying to get from one side of the map to the other. Roadways clogged with all kinds of debris. Nightmare scenario. Nightmare
scenario is exactly it. You can play this game also. It's not really a game, but you can play this scenario with the hurricane force winds, where the sustained winds of 75 miles per hour are likely. These numbers are going to go up. This is just the reason why it's only 30 or 40% right now in Miami or northward in, say, Cape Canaveral. The reason why those numbers are less than 50% is because we're not exactly sure about the track. But prepare for those numbers to go up, and prepare for hurricane force winds across much of the peninsula.
Dr. Postel, thanks so much, folks. You're at the right place for all your information with Irma and the tropics. Let's send it back over to Leon.
Yeah, in one place now, guys, under a hurricane watch is Fort Lauderdale, Florida. That's where we find Justin Michaels today. Justin?
Hey, Liana, we actually just moved south a little bit this morning. We're in Hollywood, Florida right now in a Publix grocery store. It's a big chain down here in the south. If you don't know about Publix, everybody loves Publix. And right here at this one, they actually got a truckload. Yes, a truckload of liquid gold this morning. Liquid gold in Florida right now is water. Jen is, she has a full basket full of stuff right now. Jen, you have your water right here. Are you prepared?
I'm very prepared.
What have you been doing aside from getting, carts full of food?
And hope that we can pick some people up out of the water.
Now, we do know starting today at noon, mandatory evacuations east of US 1. Does that affect you?
No.
It does not. So that's a good so something we've been hearing is how people need to be helping people. You're helping your neighbors and your neighbors are helping you?
That's correct.
What have you been doing as a team?
We've been lashing down our friends' boats, our clients' boats, securing furniture for people that can't come back or have already evacuated. We've been grabbing as much supplies as we can get, life jackets, bare necessities, little things. And when the wind clears, we'll try to collect more.
Very good. Jen, thanks so much. You stay safe. Keep your friends safe. And you can see, Jen, this is kind of the normal theme here. Carts full of food, water down below. That's how people are going to get through this storm. So a little bit of a traffic jam. The Weather Channel has created a little bit of a traffic jam here at Publix. Sorry about that. Jen, thank you so much. Be safe. So what's happening here in Broward County, here in Hollywood, Liana? We do have mandatory evacuations going into effect east of US 1, Federal Highway, US 1, east of US 1 starting at noon today. There's a state of emergency here in Hollywood, Florida, and many of the other cities up and down the east coast of Florida here. Trash collection being canceled on Friday and Saturday, so people need to prepare to secure their garbage. Also, schools are closed. Evacuation centers are being set up in different schools across Broward County. They're taking this very seriously, and you can see by all the activity here, Liana, in this Publix grocery store, people are certainly heeding these warnings. Into you.
All right, thank you so much, Justin, and stay safe as well. We want to talk about the evacuation zones. If you're just now joining us, again, a hurricane watch is in effect for South Florida. Know your zone. You need to go to your state website to determine the local evacuation routes, and you can see it. That website right there is floridadisaster.org, and we cannot emphasize it enough. You need to know this, and if you are encouraged and you are urged to evacuate, you need to do so.
For a limited time,